Hello, everyone. I hope you are all well, healthy, and at peace with who you are and where you are in life. Today, I'm posting, this is like probably the first real time post that I'm going to have in quite a while as far as my updates on what I'm doing today. But today I'm editing. I wanted to share about what I'm editing. So, a couple years ago, 2 years ago actually, I published a book called Desert of Solitude. This is the book. Desert of Solitude, Refreshed by Grace. And I shouldn't have published it when I did, but it was about turning 40. In my mind at that time, it was about turning 40. And pretty much how my life perspective had changed over the years. And I thought that that was all it was about. And pretty much just coming to a deeper understanding of life, my life, and who I am, and where I'm going and what I'm doing, all these things, right? So I couldn't really get excited about it, but I was like, wow, I need to publish it. So I just published it, and I have not promoted it at all. So it's been published and available on Amazon for like 2 years. And I'm like, maybe I'll post on Instagram, and that's about it. I haven't done anything else. And the primary reason that I was really gun shy about this is because I knew I did a really, really, really poor editing job. I cringe when I go through this book. I'm like, oh my gosh, the fonts are changing. Oh my gosh, how did I miss the word? Like, how did spell check not pick up a whole random string of letters with no meaning? But anyway, I shouldn't laugh at my, lack of professionalism. But the driving force for me to publish was that I had been writing it since 2015. And it was 2018 when I finally put it out, and I said, you know what, if I keep on sitting on this, nothing's ever going to happen. I have to move on to another project. And I actually started another project as soon as I publish, which also is not currently finished, because what I'm learning in quarantine is that one big block is doing a good job on my last gig, right? So when quarantine first started, I was like, okay, well, this is the perfect time to do a re-edit of Desert of Solitude and then put it back out, just re-release it, and so forth with corrections and an excellent edit. So that's the thing about being your own boss with your own writing, is like, it's just like, well, if you don't tell people buy it, they won't buy it. But you still did it. Anyway, bad Shonda. But so I started editing a couple of weeks ago, and I literally only got through the preface, the introduction, and the first piece, right? And that was a struggle, because I was like, okay, I'll edit a section a day. I can just speed through this, and I can't. It's really interesting, because when I finally spent a couple of days on it, I realized that I published it. I published an unfinished book, and my timing was, hey, get this out, get it done. But what I'm realizing in quarantine was that it wasn't God's timing. The lessons that I am sharing in Desert of Solitude, they weren't complete, and they're manifesting in my spirit now. So as I'm going back through this piece, I'm like, oh wow, I can see where I started to understand at the time of the writing, but where full understanding is coming through now. And I was so, forget humbled, I was just shattered on one of the main pieces that I edited. The first piece in the book is called Helping on Empty. And I struggled through editing. It's like maybe 8 pages, or no more than 10, I don't think, in a book. And I sat on that piece for like 3 days in the re-edit, because each paragraph I was like, wow, that's what I thought then, but this is what I know now. And this is what I got from that experience, right? And so I basically rewrote that piece, because my understanding was so incomplete just 2 years ago about my own development and my own growth and the lessons that I was supposed to learn in my own life. And so today I'm getting up. I got up bright and early, put on, not makeup, I put on lipstick for y'all so I can do this post and, put some moisturizer in my dry hair, all that good stuff, just so I can do a video to share about re-editing and revisioning Desert of Solitude. I also wanted to share that the biggest lesson that I'm learning about this edit is that is why it's being written. So, like I said, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, when I started writing, or where the earliest pieces are from, like 2015. I thought it was about turning 40. I thought it was about embracing my singleness. I thought it was about just enjoying the best life I possibly can, by myself, in my aloneness, in my solitude, and just like living it up, right? And just ultimately knowing that I am enough for everything that I need in life. And all that's in there, all that's going to remain, and all that's true. But in re-editing the preface, I want to share this with you. I actually want to read it. So this sort of stood out for me. And so it's preface, a note about Desert of Solitude. And this is pretty much rewritten too. I spent time rewriting this too because I was like, but that's not really saying what it needs to say. And again, understanding came this time around, not 2 years ago. And so for those of you who have followed me, shout out to Shantae, because Shantae has been supportive online for, oh my gosh, since My God and Me, Listening, Learning, and Growing on My Journey was published in 2009. And I swear, she's a reader that just keeps me feeling guilty about poor product. So thank you, Shantae. Yeah, so since Desert of Solitude, My God and Me, Listening, Learning, and Growing on My Journey, this book was about my interpersonal relationships. That's what this book was about. It was a whole bunch of stories about what I learned from people in my life. That was family, it was friends, it was coworkers, it was bosses, it was men. Men that I didn't really date but wanted to date, or men that I actually went on a date with. It was like, what the, Anyway, so it was about all those interactions and what all those people interactions taught me about my spirituality, what they taught me about my womanhood, what they taught me about just being a person intent on growing well, right? And what I've never shared is that this block that I've been having has been since I published My God and Me, Listening, Learning, and Growing My Journey. I know exactly why I had a block. I thought I could just wait it out, but it's been, where are we? 11 years, or at the time that I published Desert of Solitude, it was 9 years. And I was just like, listen, if I just keep on sitting on it, it's never going to go anywhere. But the block was because I wrote about my personal relationship while everybody was still alive. Everybody was pissed off at me. Like, I literally lost friends, which is fine. I grew from that too. But I was shamed into experiencing things so deeply. So I had a couple of people tell me, how dare you profit off of my life? And so anyone who knows me can imagine that I didn't promote that book much either, because I was like, they're right. How can I profit off of their stories? And it took me a while to get to the point to understand that I wasn't sharing the story from their point of view. I wasn't trying to claim their story as my story. I was sharing from my perspective and what I learned from those interactions. And it took me a while to accept that I wasn't being mercenary, that I wasn't being insensitive, that I literally could not grow if I didn't learn. And if I couldn't express what I learned, if I couldn't process what I learned, if I couldn't see and understand what I was being taught through these people who were interacting and intersecting with my life, right? And so that was hard for me to reconcile. For all these years, it's been hard for me to reconcile. And actually, it's been in the last couple of months, ergo quarantine, that I've understood that I can't allow other people's inability to see who they are and how they impact people, specifically me, to impact how I share my lessons. And I've always believed that my calling and ministry, my personal ministry, has been to share what I've learned spiritually, to share the ups, the downs, the uncertainty, the doubt, the joys, the ecstasy, just the radiance of God's presence in our lives and in my life specifically, and to just show what that experience has been for me. Because so many people just think it's just words, oh yeah, I believe the Bible and Jesus is good, yay Jesus. But there's no real experience of Jesus, the Holy Spirit, or God Almighty in their lives. There's no performance of the word in their life, right? And so I've always believed that my calling has been to show how the word has performed in my life and continues to perform daily, right? And so it's been hard for me to write, even my blogs dropped because I'm like, well, I can't write about people because they're going to be mad. So I'm like, well, here's another experience that I just remember in my mind, but don't take anywhere. And so that's been really, really hard for me, emotionally and spiritually, and just psychologically, I think. And so that was primary reason that I just pushed out Desert of Solitude when I did. And why I primarily just focused on me and didn't really talk about other people. At least that's what I thought. It was like, okay, well, it'll just be about me. Well, I'm boring. To me, my life is absolutely boring. I get so sick of me. I'm like, oh, what am I doing today? Who cares? I really don't care what I'm doing today. I don't want to think about the next trip, the next job, the next project, the next whatever. Sometimes I just want to be full of someone else, right? In a sense that I'm focused on someone else's joy, someone else's activity, someone else's just life in some way, because being full of all of this, my life, 24/7, it gets boring. And so that's what Desert of Solitude got. It got boring for me. I was looking at it, I'm like, how do I make this exciting? Who cares what I learned on a mountaintop in Switzerland? Who cares I, put up the fist in front of the United Nations in Geneva? I'm like, whatever, it's just a thing, right? So what came to me while I was editing is this. I'm just going to read a snippet. The first book I wrote, and this is in the preface, this is preface to know about Desert of Solitude. The first book I wrote about my faith journey was published nearly 14 years ago. My God and me, listening, learning, and growing on my journey is a compilation of stories focused on interpersonal relationships and how I function in mine as I committed to applying my faith to my whole life. And then I'm going to drop down. In Desert of Solitude, Refreshed by Grace, I continue sharing my faith journey through my interpersonal relationship and the challenges of sustaining a faith-filled life practice. And that's the crux of it. And it took me, what year are we in? We're in year 5 for me starting to me editing deeply, of me getting an understanding that Desert of Solitude is not just about me. It's about my interpersonal relationship with God. It's about, not just the peaks and valleys of living a life of faith, but literally how am I responding, interacting, understanding, following what my spirit is telling me, what my mind is telling me, what my heart is telling me. How do I sort of bring all these elements of who I am into harmony, right? And that's where I'm under. That literally came during this quarantine. And I'm like, wow, that literally puts Desert of Solitude in a whole different space for me. Because now it's not just about me and living a fabulous life at 40 and single and no children and all this good stuff of the social norms that I, like so many others, have bought into. Now it's truly about my faith. And how deeply I'm impacted by the things I do because of that faith, right? And so now, or soon, you will not only have my God and me about my interpersonal relationships, you will also have a very updated and deeply true Desert of Solitude, Refreshed by Grace, that talks about how that intrapersonal space is so very important in how we grow as believers, how we grow as women and men, how we grow just in our humanity and our spirituality. So I wanted to share that. And thank you for listening. I'm looking forward to re-releasing Desert of Solitude, Refreshed by Grace. Be blessed.